This next section of Illustrator Lab 4 is understanding layers. This is a big part of what Illustrator does. Much like the shapes that are stacked on each other, you can stack groups of shapes and text on a layer. You would go to Window, Layers. It looks like this. If you hover over it, it'll say Layers. And this is the palette. And what you'll have is anytime you open a new document, it automatically just saves everything on one layer. You have to specify if you want more layers, what their names are, and if you wanted to create on that layer or move things to that layer, you can do all of those things. So here it is, this ping pong look poster, and it's all on layer 1. If you wanted to change this, you double click and put background or whatever you would like to name it. And if you turn this arrow, you will see all the individual elements as a sublayer. So you can see the hierarchy here. This is everything on this is divided up here. And even here, now if I click the eyeball, it'll turn it off and on. You'll see what's on that layer, and even another layer of individual elements. So it can get very down to the very one shape of each letter. And here you can see there's some sublayers and sub-sublayers of the ping pong paddles. Right now they're all indicated. If I click on them, they have a blue outline because this one layer is labeled with blue. If I create a new layer, you can do that here, or you can do that here, new layer, sublayer, and you can choose options. You can choose what color the bounding boxes will be. So let's do orange. You can see that. You could also dim the images. So if you were drawing on the top of, let's say, a JPEG that you brought in, you could have that on its own layer, lock it so you don't delete it or mess with it. And you can dim it back so you can see what you're doing, especially if there's a lot of dark objects. So if I do that and I draw something, and this is how you lock and unlock. This is how you see and unsee everything. So if I was to create, let me lock this layer, you can see that it's orange. So when I'm working on this layer, everything I do is going to be an orange bounding box. And if I go to my colors, you can see that it's going to have an orange outline. Go back to my layers, and you can double click on this. So images would be, something that would be like a JPEG or something. You can, most of this you don't need to fool with, but you can. This is to target this. You can drag to move the appearance. You could change the color, like I said. You can throw this away. You can add a sublayer. So on this background layer, you can add a sublayer. Oh, I got to unlock it. And you can see if you lock the main layer, all the other layers will lock. If you unlock it, you can lock just individual sublayers if you'd like. You can't do much if it's locked or it's hidden. It won't let you do anything either. So I'm going to add a sublayer, and then you can name it, square, whatever you'd like. So you can play around with this. You can save that selection. If you're looking for something, here, let me unlock. You can click and drag to unlock more than one layer. If you're looking for something and you can't find it, this will tell you where it's at. And if you get hundreds of layers and sublayers, that might be difficult if you have to make one change or a color shift. You might have a hard time finding it buried in all of this, and you can click on it and say, where is it, and move it. So you can move these out of the layer into a new layer. Let's do that. You can click and drag, and now you have a new layer called square. And I'm going to create a shape, and I've got a color already. And you can see it's blocking everything underneath. You can click and drag and move it be below it, and now it's in the background, and you can actually see there was some text underneath. So that only has one shape on it, and it's one rectangle, and it's this color here. So you can play around with the different layers and move them around and see what happens. You can bring that in. So now I clicked and dragged from the sublayer onto this new main layer, and now it's on top of this rectangle, and you can see anything above it is causing it to, they have a transparency on it. If I undo, you can see what is on top of these paddles. Okay, so play around with that and how the layers work. And if you don't like them, you can just hit the trash button and they disappear. You can undo Command Z and switch this around. But now what you see is the paddles are also part of the square. So I would have to take this paddles and put it back where it was and move this down so that everything's in the right order. So keep that in mind when you're using layers, that if you have two layers and you want one on top and one on bottom and there's something in the middle, you have to separate those so that because otherwise the whole thing, if it's on one main layer, will be moved. So play around with the layers and move things around. You can follow along with the instructions.